Okay, let's get moving again. The world map has changed, and we've got to free our ship before we can actually see how much things have changed. Again, it kind of feels a bit ridiculous that they've taken an airship away from us for the second time in the same game. Yeah, definitely guessing that the Black Belt is an upgrade from the Monk simply based on how things worked in Final Fantasy I, though it might not be the best idea to make that kind of assumption considering some of the various mechanical differences between this game and the original Final Fantasy. Hell, you can't even predict what some of the differences are going to be based on the version of the same damn game you're going through, because the Pixel remaster of Final Fantasy I, kinda different from the PSP version. Well, that old man certainly didn't mourn Aria for long. We lost her in the same clip we met her, and we didn't really interact with her all that much while she was here, so yeah, I'm not mourning her either, but still, kinda weird. I'm not too sure why I'm trying to enter buildings from behind or the sides sometimes. I don't really think that's much of a thing in this game, though it was kind of a thing in the original Pokemon generation, and possibly some of the others. Again, it's kind of funny to think about just how much Final Fantasy has shaped a lot of role-player games, with hidden paths, storytelling becoming more of a thing, you know, that sort of crap. It was innovative for its first game, it was innovative for its third, and its fourth. And those are just the games that I have or am currently working on uploading. I'm sure that some of the others were also innovative in their own right. Oh yeah, definitely a good upgrade to go from the Kenpo Gi to the Black Belt Gi. Part of me wishes there was some kind of in-universe explanation for why one Gi is more defensive than another. But then this is the sort of game that keeps its world building so basic that you can't really say there really is all that much to explain in universe. Part of me is a bit annoyed that we didn't get anything that could be regarded as a pure upgrade for the white or black mages. We've got an upgrade for the basic warrior and the basic monk, and considering how powerful magic can be, even if I don't use it as much as I probably should, really shocking that there aren't more magic classes. Great. Now I can't help wishing that the stores would tell us what classes can actually equip the stuff we're looking at here, in case we're planning on changing classes at some point. Dear God, it's funny just how many of my issues with the early Final Fantasy games have to do with their user interface more than anything. Some of those issues were solved by the Pixel remaster, others weren't. But with the exception of the leveling up system in Final Fantasy II, it all seems pretty bearable to me. Considering I'm never planning on being the scholar class, I should probably sell those books. I'm sure on paper that class seemed rather awesome, but unfortunately it's only really useful on the Floating Tree Castle against that one boss. And you can kinda get away with not having that class when you fight him, as we did in this playthrough. I'm not too sure that would be as viable in the 3D remake of the game, though, considering the fact that bosses have more health and can attack twice per turn in the remake, compared to the original and Pixel remasters. That makes that fight in particular a goddamn wall for you to have to climb over. Anyway, looks like barehanded we can do more damage than if we equipped a single one of these Kaiser Knuckles, but we don't have the strength to get away with being equal to two of them. It's certainly a bit awkward how the hand-to-hand combat classes work in a series where equipment means a lot, and also awkward how the game measures equipment when you can equip two weapons at once. Okay, at some point we're gonna want the chakra band as well. It shouldn't take too long to gain that kind of money, but I might not even remember to bother by the time we get it. And it also seems to be the only bit of equipment we can't afford at this particular moment, at least of the jobs we've got currently equipped. We might end up with a very bad money situation if I change classes anytime soon. And it's not like this game typically does all that much to tell us what classes it thinks we should have for the next fight. So if the next boss is especially specific in how we're supposed to beat it, we're not gonna know until we're right in the thick of it, or unless I look at an online guide and see what we're in for before we actually get there. Right. Of course there are monsters in the sewers. We already were told that the next person we need to meet is down there somewhere, so, Yeah. That legend isn't just here, it's in the floating continent and in an entirely different world as well. Well, I suppose that was meant to be important. Four old men who think they are the chosen ones. And apparently they trigger every time we speak to this woman. I'm sure they're quite the light-hearted crew, but I'm afraid this game's story doesn't really do enough with the characters for us to do some good comedy relief, or at least not for long. I'm pretty sure that Final Fantasy IV could have used more purposeful humor, especially since a lot of the stuff they tried to do in that one they were trying to be taken way too seriously, and it just lost impact after a certain point. Ugh. It should not be that easy to convince the old man that we are who we say we are, especially when we have these four LARPers wandering around in this village. None of them seem to have any individual name, or an individual sprite. But then we saw two named characters die in front of us, one of them incredibly fast after we met her in the previous clip. It might be a bit of a bad idea to try to assume who is who isn't actually important around here. Oh, I'm sure the Nameless Fellows will have somehow managed to get where we need to be before us, even though this is supposed to be the only possible entrance, and we will never see them travel through it. Wait, he's just gonna leave it open indefinitely for us? So not only did he open it up with little prompting, he's not even gonna try to keep things secure behind us, making sure whatever monsters down there don't wander through the... What the hell? Once again, I'm putting more thought into it than the game designers did. Anyway, I'm just gonna save and quickly show that our ship is indeed chained for some odd reason. It's also interesting to note that we have a hell of a lot more land to explore now than before we did the thing with the water crystal, but that's probably gonna have to wait another clip or two before we see any of it. Anyway, I'm not too sure why I'm heading in this direction when we don't have the shoes that we need to reach the mansion, though at the very least it's interesting to note that Carmine hits significantly weaker than anyone else at the moment. Is that because the Blood Blade is less effective against specific kinds of monsters, or is there some other explanation? For some reason, I was expecting something more for walking into that bog unprepared. Maybe a cutscene, maybe a short punishment dungeon, but certainly more than what we got there. Well, that's certainly an interesting enemy design. Hell, I swear that the overall designs of enemies in this game feels pretty inconsistent all around. They're just throwing random pictures without any real direction behind them. Anyway, Midori went down in one hit, rather disconcerting considering how much health he had at the time he got hit. I guess that just means his armor isn't up to snuff anymore. again, it's funny how I'm annoyed that there aren't any regular potions in this town. The high potion is most definitely an upgrade, but not only is it a bit pricey considering how much money we have left, it's not terribly efficient considering how much health we have overall. It's not over 500 with too many of our characters. Okay, why the hell am I talking to all the people in the tavern all over again? Sure, I recorded this session a good amount of time after the previous session, but I would have thought I'd have remembered checking in with everyone in town. Well, we certainly gave those nameless old men long enough to have a head start. Guess we'll see how much trouble they're in when we get there. By the way, have I mentioned how weird it is that we get damaged by waterfalls and lava falls, but we don't take damage from walking shoulder deep in actual lava? Because that still feels just outright weird to me. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Thumb slipped into the wrong button. I'm sorry, that doesn't look like a liger by any means. It looks like some kind of two-headed horned leopard. Anyway, seems Midori is starting to hit rather pathetically at this point. Again, his equipment has not been getting too many upgrades. Oh dear god, I should probably change his class at some point soon, shouldn't I? Anyway, cat claws are apparently not an upgrade from the Kaiser Knuckles, at least in terms of the damage we cause. I suppose that makes sense, as does the fact that the old men ran into trouble. Goblins? We're 14 clips into this game and we're running into goblins again? I know the old men aren't all that tough, so pretty much anything would be overwhelming to them, but still, it's certainly been a while since goblins were treated like any kind of threat to us in this game. And I don't think we can randomly encounter any goblins anywhere on this continent. Yeah, that was quite a bit of overkill considering how basic the bastards were. We could have dealt with those odds back in the first clip, and it was probably a waste to use any magic on them whatsoever. Why did you seriously think it was you if you've never actually gone on any kind of adventure whatsoever? Are you even young enough to be able to do anything worthwhile on the grindstone at this point? Stories written in Japan seem to have this especially annoying tendency to go for younger heroes, as in middle school aged if not younger. And sometimes you run into characters that look like they're middle-aged, and then it turns out they're in their early 30s at most, if not their late 20s. Yeah, Brett definitely is the hardest hitting person on the team at this point. Completely understandable, especially after the class change. Well, she looks important. Here's hoping that Delilah here doesn't turn out to be a boss fight. Oh, it's her. Why would our characters not think she was Delilah when she's the only woman we found living in the sewers? Kinda funny that the only person in this village who didn't doubt us was the guy who locked the sewers in the first place. Should I bother asking why these four followed us this far in after we've already saved them from basic goblins? And where are the real shoes, if not with her, anyway? Huh. got to admit, I was not expecting things to go this smoothly down here. I was definitely expecting a boss fight, if only because it's kind of traditional at the end of a dungeon. Sure, this was a shorter dungeon, but still. Well, I suppose they were more helpful than I would have given them credit for. Wait, they know teleport? I guess there really is more than meets the eye with these guys. Ah, thank you for clarifying that for us, sir. Oh, if you think that was determination, then you clearly have no idea the kind of crap we had to go through just to get to this village. And you definitely won't be able to comprehend the sort of ridiculousness we're gonna have to go through when we get to the final dungeon of the game. But hey, you did more adventuring than most, so credit where it's due. None of you may have names, but you've proven yourselves approximately as important as a princess and a man who had an actual explicit destiny back on the floating island. And you get to live to tell the tale, so yeah. Actually, while I'm thinking about it, whose death felt more out of nowhere, Desh or Arya? Son of a bitch. So a Black Flan can inflict that many status effects in a single attack. I know it's not the first time we've been hit with it in this game, but that attack should have been relegated to just endgame enemies, not random mid-game enemies that we find in the middle of a field. I suppose I should have thought of removing the silent status effect from Carmine as well, especially since he's technically capable of using healing magic. But I'm pretty sure that we'll have Midori use healing magic when we're low on healing items, not Carmine. Anyway, looks like the guy who owns this manor is a little on the gaudy side. Well, it's certainly been a while since we've needed to use a magic key on anything. Not that that room had anything for us. I'm sorry, but those bears should not be standing like that. They look less like actual bears and more like wampas from Star Wars. Really? 300 from a single attack. And Midori is down again. I'm starting to get the feeling that I'm under-leveled and underprepared for this stage of the game. At the very least, Midori being a red mage is starting to feel like it's an outright liability this far into the game. At the very least, his muscles and his equipment aren't good enough for physical tasks anymore. Or at least they aren't as good as they should be, considering the quality of enemies we're running into for random encounters. It's a damn shame. I like the idea of a red mage, in theory. But in Final Fantasy 1 and 3, it just feels better to grab a specialist, rather than someone who's a jack of all trades. As a side note, bit embarrassing that I ended up having to sleep in the inn for a second time there, since I forgot to revive Midori first. Ah, well, it's not like our money situation is horrendously bad. Though apparently I didn't buy the chakram thing I was probably supposed to.